This story begins in the deserts of Mongolia, the largest desert in East Asia. A company had come here hoping to extract oil, but their information turns out to be wrong. There is no oil. Now, everyone is preparing to return. A plane has been sent to take them back, and the pilot of this plane is named Frank. He is accompanied by his co-pilot. Together they are supposed to take all the equipment and employees back to Beijing. Everyone boards the plane, and they take off for Beijing. But soon, a massive sandstorm starts in the desert. Frank's co-pilot asks, "What should we do?" Frank replies that if they turn back, they'll have to wait for fuel, because they don't have enough to take off again, and no one knows how long that would take. So, they decide to move forward. Frank flies the plane higher in an attempt to escape the sandstorm. However, the plane is overloaded. They get caught in the storm and try to contact help through the radio, but they're unsuccessful. The sand causes one of the engines to fail. Frank says that they need to make an emergency landing. He begins to bring the plane down, but the landing is not easy because he can't see anything ahead. As the plane descends further, the rear section hits a rock, causing the back door to open. One of the passengers is thrown out and dies. The plane continues to slide across the desert before finally coming to a stop. When it halts, they find that 2 more passengers have died during the crash. However, they still can't go outside because a sandstorm is raging. When the storm finally settles, it is shown that the entire plane has been buried under sand. But after a few hours, the wind blows the sand away, and the plane becomes visible again. Everyone comes out and checks the food supplies. They find that they have enough food and water for about 1 month. One of the men says he will try to walk out of the desert. To escape, they would have to travel about 200 miles, because they are no longer in Mongolia but somewhere in China. However, they don't know their exact location, and their radio isn't working. The man insists he can do it. He says he's run marathons, done hiking and trekking, and believes he can walk out. But he is told that it's the month of July, the hottest time in the desert. If you drink a glass of water, your body will sweat out 10 glasses within minutes. He then says he'll travel only at night. But he's told that the mountains in this region are magnetic, which means his compass won't work, and he'll just keep walking in circles and end up in the same place. After hearing this, he realizes he can't leave on his own right now. That night, while everyone is sleeping inside the plane and a sandstorm is blowing outside, one of the men, named Davis, goes outside to use the toilet. On his way back, his foot hits a rock. And as a result, he tumbles down the sand. In the storm, he can't see anything around him and loses his way. Although he yells for help, no one can hear his voice. In the morning, when everyone wakes up, they notice that their companion Davis is missing. They search for him everywhere, but he is nowhere to be found. He has been buried in the sand. Everyone becomes very worried by this. One of the women goes to Pilot Frank and asks him, "Is there any chance that someone will come to rescue us?" Frank replies, "Only about a 5% chance." But he adds, "We can't just leave because we are in the middle of the desert. We have very little food and water. If we try to walk out of here with this limited supply, it will all run out within 2 days, and none of us will survive." He admits there is little chance that anyone will come looking for them, but says, "I'm an optimist. That's why I prefer to wait here." Meanwhile, the people outside are slowly starting to lose hope that anyone will come to save them. Because of that, 2 of them decide to leave and take some water with them. But Frank says, no one will take the water. This leads to a physical fight, and during the scuffle, the water gets spilled. At this point, a man named Elliot approaches them. He says, "I have an idea that could save all our lives. I've been observing this plane for days, and I believe we can repurpose its parts to build a new aircraft." Frank asks him, "What do you know about planes?" Elliot replies, I used to design aircraft. No one really knew much about Elliot because he wasn't working with the oil company in Mongolia. He had joined them only recently after being stranded during an Eros mission and had been with them for the past 2 years. After learning this about Elliot, everyone is surprised, but at the same time, a sense of hope is born. They all agree to rebuild the plane. However, Frank doesn't agree with them. He flat out refuses and says it's not possible. The next morning, one of them, named James leaves the camp and the woman starts to go after him to search, but Frank stops her and says, "I'll go." Frank sets out to find James. He reaches the hill where the rear part of their plane had crashed, and the body of the man who had fallen from the plane is still lying there, but without clothes. Nearby, there are also some bullet casings. Seeing this, Frank is completely shocked. Just then, James arrives. He says, "Someone's already been here before us. I came here to retrieve my watch that I lost to this man in a poker game. But now the watch isn't on his wrist." That's when they realize desert smugglers must have come, taken the watch, and used the dead body for target practice, explaining the bullet casings. Frank tells James to return with him, but James refuses. He asks, "Why don't you want to rebuild the plane?" Frank replies, "Because I don't want to give them false hope. That's not going to happen." James says, "Everyone in this world wants love. And if we can't give someone love, then we should at least give them hope. And if we can't even give hope, then we should let them do what they want." After hearing James's words, Frank agrees to help the others rebuild the plane, even though he still doesn't believe it's possible. Both of them return to the crash site and join the group. Everyone starts working together to rebuild the plane. They don't work during the day due to the extreme heat, so they work at night. But trouble arises one night when a welding spark falls into the fuel they had saved for fire and powering the generator. A huge blast occurs. Thankfully, no one dies, but all their fuel is destroyed. Now, they are left with just enough fuel to attempt taking off. They can't waste it on anything else. Because of this, they can no longer work at night using generators and have to begin working during the day despite the harsh desert heat. Still, they don't give up. They start working in the day. Finally, they reach a critical stage, attaching one of the wings. They only have one chance. If the wing falls to the ground, they won't be able to lift it again since they have no crane or heavy equipment. They begin slowly lowering the wing from above, but suddenly, the chain holding it snaps, and the wing slides rapidly downward, scraping the ground and crashing into the side of the plane. Everyone is shocked. One of their teammates, who was already inside the plane to attach the wing using a board, comes out and says, "I did it." It turns out that when the chain broke and the wing slid down, it landed exactly in the right position. He managed to secure it just in time. With the wing now attached, the entire structure of the plane is complete. Everyone is filled with hope that they can now fly out of there. They start dancing and celebrating while continuing to clear away the sand from the plane so that they can prepare a runway and take off from there. But it's not that easy. One day, a powerful electrical storm comes, with lightning striking all around. Since the plane's wing contains fuel, everyone runs away from the area, except Elliot. He refuses to leave because he doesn't want to lose the plane at any cost. Just when lightning is about to strike him, Frank grabs him and jumps away from the spot, saving his life. If anything had happened to Elliot, none of them would be able to complete the plane. They name the plane Phoenix, a reference to the Egyptian mythological bird that symbolizes rebirth and power, especially in the desert. But they still have a lot of work to do on the Phoenix. Gradually, their water supply starts running out. One night, from a sand ridge, they see a group of people camping at a distance. These turn out to be smugglers, arms dealers who transport weapons from one country to another through desert routes. Frank suggests asking them for water. Elliot disagrees, but Frank and a few others decide to approach the smugglers for help. Frank and one of his teammates hide behind rocks to protect themselves in case of danger, armed with guns. When one of them asks for water, one of the smugglers shoots at their teammate. In response, Frank and his hidden teammate fire back, killing some of the smugglers. One of the smugglers, however, manages to escape. Frank has a clear shot at him but refuses to shoot because he says he's not a killer. James finds the same watch on one of the dead smugglers that had once belonged to their fallen friend, the one who died when the plane crashed. This confirms that these are the same smugglers who had previously come and cruelly used their dead friend's body for target practice. Clearly, they are dangerous people. The surviving smuggler who is wounded is brought back to their camp near the plane. Some want to kill him out of revenge, but Frank refuses. Tension rises. In the midst of this argument, Elliot suddenly shoots the wounded smuggler, killing him. This leads to a heated argument between Frank and Elliot. Elliot blames Frank, saying, "You were the pilot. We're stuck here because of you. Our friend died because of you. I told you not to go, but you still did." Frank gets angry and punches Elliot. Now Elliot is furious. His ego is hurt. He says, "I won't work on the plane anymore. I've done more than enough. I worked like 10 people while the rest of you relaxed." Carly comes to him and pleads, saying, "We can't build this plane without you. We need you." Elliot says he'll only help if everyone requests him. Everyone, even Frank, ends up requesting him. Frank says, "You're the boss here. Please finish this job." Elliot finally agrees. Once again, the whole group starts working on finishing the plane. One day, they spot, through binoculars, the same smuggler who had escaped earlier, now returning with reinforcements. However, the smugglers don't immediately attack, knowing that the group is now armed with their own weapons. But the smugglers also know that the group's food and water will soon run out, and when they are weak and desperate, the smugglers plan to attack. Meanwhile, the group increases their efforts, working harder than ever to complete the Phoenix. They start working again and finally finish the job. Then Frank finds a magazine containing many plane models. Looking at these models, Elliot had actually created the model for their plane. Now everyone realizes that Elliot used to build toy planes, small models. Though those planes could fly, he had never built a big, full-sized plane before. This makes everyone angry, especially Ayan, who points a gun at Elliot's head. He says, "You have been fooling us all these weeks. This plane will never fly because you have never built a big flying plane before." But Elliot is confident and says, "This plane will fly. Though we used to make small planes, they were remote-controlled and required a lot of balance." Frank stops Ayan. Just then, a storm begins to blow. As the winds get stronger, the plane they built over weeks starts to lift slightly in the air on its own. Seeing this, everyone understands that the plane will fly. The hope that was once lost in their hearts awakens again. But the desert storm covers the plane completely with sand. After the storm ends, everyone feels hopeless again, still unsure if the plane can carry them away. Frank says, "We worked hard to build this. We will fly it out of here." They dig out the plane from the sand and drag it to a place without sand. They start the plane's engine. It starts, but stops quickly. After several attempts, finally the plane's engine runs steadily. Hearing the engine, the smugglers nearby begin riding toward them on horses armed and ready to attack. The team climbs onto the plane and hangs onto the wings. The plane is designed so that there is no room inside for anyone to sit. It's a small plane built from a big airplane. The plane starts moving on the runway while smugglers shoot continuously. No one gets hit. The runway ends, and the smugglers believe they have been killed. But suddenly, Phoenix, their plane, takes off from the cliff and begins flying into the sky. Everyone is overjoyed because their weeks of hard work have paid off. In this way, they escape from the deadly harsh desert from which escape seemed impossible. At the end, we see pictures of all of them happy with their families and their work. Frank and his co-pilot start their own airline named Phoenix. Elliot's photo appears in a magazine with a question mark and the caption, "NASA's New Hope," meaning he now works for NASA, and with that, the movie ends.